So, spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. Season 11 finale. Hour and a half long, at least when you watch it on the, through the History app. But, you know, the shows have kind of been dragging on. And the first part of this show drags on quite a bit because they're just, you know, they're at day 75 when the episode starts, or lower 70s, whatever. And it's just, they're just plodding through. It's like, mind-numbingly cold. They've got, they're all suffering from what I want to say that being separated for humans for so long. I mean, they have people come in and give them the med checks and probably swapping batteries and things, but I believe they don't try to talk much to them at all, get the things and get out. So, it's doing a number on people's minds. And so from one of the contestants that's called Dub, he reveals, I like it when they reveal things about the show, but evidently when you go in, you can check a box whether you want to be notified if there's a family emergency or not. And he had checked not. Well, he's fine with that at the beginning, he says, but now he's got to this point, it's been, over 70 days. He has no idea what's happening in his family situation and things like that. And of course, he's had this human deprivation, if you could call it that. So the idea of the solitary stuff that's going on, it is really difficult for him. And two, you got to remember, if they were being well fed every day, their emotions could be significantly different. But they're in a situation where they have to boil water, and chances are that rigmarole that they're not drinking as much water as they should. So they're suffering from some amount of dehydration. And so that's a factor. And then just, we know they're not getting enough food. So, and then that can all play on your mind's ability to make decisions. So decisions they make now, 6 months later, they might see as a big mistake, or they may not. So, I mean, we can't tell, only they can tell. And, too, I've noticed sometimes with people, when people make a really bad decision sometimes, they kind of stick with it anyway. In other words, oh, no, I did this, and they realize they really wish they hadn't. That, they'll still say, oh, yeah, I did this because of this and this. It was the right decision to make. And they won't say 6 months later, oh, gee, I should have never pressed that button. But is it, I forget who was talking about it, but talking about eventually what's happening, they're thinking about food all the time, their family all the time, and then they're thinking about the button. They said the red button. So evidently on the sat phone, when you call someone, you push this red button, and that connects you with them. And I've never seen someone call and say they weren't tapping out. So I don't know whether once you press that button, that's considered you tapping out officially. So Dub goes out, and his face, you can see, looks really sunken. You can tell that he's lost an enormous amount of weight. They didn't say how much he lost, but I think all the contestants except Timber had lost 50 pounds by day 50 or 60. So you figure they've gone this much longer. We're into day 70s, and they're they're just losing more weight. And the other thing that's wrecking havoc with them too is this 4 hours a day, like that's all. So basically, in the cold, they're spending basically 20 hours about in their shelters, just trying to stay warm. And that, as one of them says, there's only so long you can sleep. You can try to keep sleeping, but it doesn't work. Eventually, your body's like saying, nope, I'm not going back to sleep again. It's funny because you would think they must not be really depressed about what's going on, because sometimes with depression, you can end up sleeping. It's an escape, and your body will let you keep sleeping. But, it's just too cold, too. And people are worried about their fingers and their toes. You know what? Someone found a gill net, and I never saw that show back up with someone. I just thought of that a second ago and wondered whatever happened, whoever found that. But so they're getting really cold. They're feeling it, the toes and their fingers. Sleeping, is getting more difficult. And they have all this time alone in the shelter. And it's a lot to deal with. So you figure, even if they're extremely tired and they sleep 10 hours, okay, they get 14 hours. They sleep 10 hours, and they get this only 4 hours of daylight. So 14 that leaves 10 more hours of basically time that they're probably going to be in the shelter. Now, could some of them have planned to do more activities outside at night? I'm not sure. You figure at this point, most of the animals that would probably attack you are gone. Like the bear are probably hibernating by now. So it might be safer to be out at night in some ways, but then, you have all the other problems with, one of the big things is mechanical injury, they call it. Basically fall down and something happens. You break something, or in this case, early in the show, someone was holding their bow and arrow and fell, and one of the arrows turned around and went 4 inches into his thigh. And, that probably would have been fatal if he wasn't pulled out of there. So Deb decides to go out. This idea, like I say, he's worried about not knowing about his family. And like I say, that's in the context, I think, of being just starved for human contact. And just this idea that there's just so much darkness and only 4 hours of daylight. That's 20 hours of darkness. That's a lot. And, in some of the countries where they have this and people are more into the modern world, there's a lot of alcoholism because there's so much time, and people have lost the ability to entertain themselves. And also, we have leisure time now. Back in the day when these people were trying to survive, there wasn't much of anything for leisure time. You were working. In other words, if you were a native person, indigenous person, way up north, and you were a woman, you would have been, chewing sealskins to make them softer so that you could make them into clothes for yourself, your husband, your children. I mean, that was a tremendous task, important task that really took a lot of time and skill. But then there'd be all these other things, activities you'd have to be doing. You usually wouldn't be sitting there, say over the course of like they're doing a week, having, 70 hours of time when you didn't have something to do that you had to do. Now, I don't know. Maybe they should be doing things to affect their survival. And one of the guys talked about not doing carving spoons, but again, that's how one contestant won, the Fowler guy from Maine. He kept his attitude up by having something to do during, they had much longer days where they were, but just that idea that in the shelter, he would be carving spoons. And when he got done, they showed him getting out of the shelter. And he just had, it looked like he had 100 of them that he had made. But so, if you're not doing something to affect survival, at least be doing something that's going to keep you busy. That old saying, idle hands are the devil's playground. But just that idea, you've got to keep yourself active, and being completely alone is a lot to handle, especially as it increases. That's why solitary confinement is such a big punishment, because it's hard. It's hard. And, even some people that think, I forget which contestant said this, was he didn't like people, he didn't like being around people. And after this, he decided he liked people a lot. He wanted to be around them. I mean, still like the nature aspect, but. So then we have Timber, who's got the moose and everything. And they show one scene, and he's almost punching out, tapping out. I'm like, don't do it. I'm talking on TV. Don't do it, you idiot. Just do it. Stay another day. And so he's, but then he comes, they go on with the show a little bit. Then they come back, and he's holding the sat phone. And sure enough, he taps out. He goes through his reasoning, and again, Okay, who knows if this decision he'll think 6 months later was the right one, because he's the one that's lost the less weight. He had this moose to eat, although, he's complaining about the jerky cutting up his mouth and doing a number on his teeth. And it's like, I don't understand that, why he wouldn't have. If it was me, I would have had some rocks, and I would have bashed that jerky up into more of a powder consistency, or put it in with some water. But I would have done anything to make it, if I was having a problem with it cutting my teeth, my gums or things, I definitely would beat that stuff up before I put it in my mouth. Because as they point out in some of the subtitles, having open wounds, you just don't know what you're going to get for an infections. And they don't have a bunch of antibiotics there. Maybe they got some in their kit. I'm not sure. They have a first aid kit, but normally it seems like that's mostly used by people who are, getting ready to go out. But, in case, to take care of themselves until rescue can be effected. So we've got, Dub goes out, then Timber goes out, and his logic is, and it's like everyone can lay something out really logically, and so we don't really get to second guess them, I guess. But it makes you just wonder, I guess, in that situation, how they're going to feel later. But he has this rationale of thinking, well, I'm going to have this $500,000, and I'm going to go work back. He worked for relief organizations, so he's going to go back, and there might be someone there that, $5,000 could change their life forever. Maybe $15,000 could get them out of that country and establish in a country like America or some other country that isn't, basically, in a terrible war situation or just poverty or whatever. And he thought having that money would be difficult for him to go back to his job knowing he had that money. And it's like, well, I can see that, but way back originally he was talking about one of the reasons he wanted that money so he could form a stable place for him, his family, and his children. And in other words, I would assume that would have meant there's going to be a home. He's from the U.S. He's going to be home in the U.S., wife and children there. Maybe he still goes off or, whatever. And so I guess he kind of decided against that. And he thought, and again, I guess I can't second guess him, but here I am doing it anyway. That idea that, he's teaching his children that you need money. You need, that they needed this money instead of, knowing what good values you should have and working for what you get. But to me, I hate to say this, but $500,000 isn't a lot of money. People think like it's millions, and it isn't. I mean, you're going to have to pay income tax on it. They're going to take almost half of it. So now you're down to $250,000. That's just the price of a house in the U.S. now in most places. So it's like that isn't a huge amount of money anymore. Yeah, at one time it was, but now it just isn't. Even they talked about the people on the regular Survivor show getting $1 million. It's like them, I forget what they say, they were paying like somewhere between $300,000 to $600,000 in taxes on it. So you're really starting off with there's $1 million, now you only have $500,000. Well, when you get $500,000, it goes down to $250,000, $250,000. And when you really think of that, that's not that much money. Yeah, sure, you can use it wisely and do a lot of things with your life. You could even put in an account, take it out $25,000 each year so you don't run out of it, spend it all at once. This Fowler guy that won it, the guy from Maine, well, I don't know the whole story, but basically they kind of ran through the money, and his wife left him, or he left. Somehow something dissolved, and so the fact that he had all that money once, I think it was kind of gone, So he's basically like starting over again. So I don't, and it's like if someone said to me, "Oh, Mike, we want to give you $2 million, but we know from looking at your case and studies we've said there's a good chance that you'll end up divorced if we give you this $2 million." I'd say, take it away. My marriage is way too important to get some money and to, risk losing it. Now, of course, everybody thinks, oh no, I can take that. I'm the one person who can get a big sum of money that in a way I didn't really earn by steady, slowly living. I won somehow. And, I'm the guy that can handle it, right? That's what they all say. My goodness. There was my brother is a lawyer, and I saw him on TV. And there's this case, this guy, and he's from Maine too, but he hadn't paid child support for 2 years, and he had won the lottery. Well, come to find out, I talked to my brother, and he had run through all the money. I don't know exactly how much it was, but he was like in debt. I mean, it's incredibly easy to misspend. Even if you had $100 cash after taxes, it's very easy to spend that and to end up with $1 million in debt. So it's like you lost $2 million. Now, before, when you were just regular Joe, you couldn't get all that line of credit. But when you get $1 million, you can. So, I don't know. Timber, whatever. He did what he did, and hopefully he'll still be happy with that decision later. And then, so we have William from Labrador. It's funny, they put I really like this guy a lot. And they have to put subtitles down for him because he has quite a thick accent, Canadian accent, or maybe it's more particular to Labrador or whatever, but, he's got quite a thick accent. But he's the guy that, I couldn't believe him getting these birds he's got the long pole with a snare on the end of it, and he creeps up slowly to the bird and very slowly gets that noose in front of the bird. Then eventually the bird's like, oh, wait a second, there's a human back there. He flies out, catches himself in the noose. That's it. And so I think he caught they had on camera at least 3 birds that he had caught that way. I don't know if he caught more that way. But here he is just plodding along, getting some food, he's a food cache, and, critters get into that, so he does something else. But he's just like plodding along, and he wins. So this idea of, before, when we looked at things, you would have said, oh, anyone who gets large game is going to be the winner. Well, that wasn't the case here. The person with the large game went out when he still had food, and he was in pretty good physical shape still. Now this William from Labrador, he's lost, they said, like 74 pounds or something. Or did they say, something like that. And he only weighed 186 when he went in. So he's almost lost half of his body weight. And it's like, I thought they pulled people because of that. I mean, there's a body mass index in some of their other shows they talked about that once you went below that number, they felt there was too much of a danger of you hurting internal organs permanently, and they would pull people out. But my goodness, if he lost half his weight, and he showed his belt to his wife and how many holes he had put in it. And it was just amazing that he, hopefully he'll completely recover from this. But his idea was he wanted to move back to where he was originally from because he liked that area. He wanted his children to experience that lifestyle growing up. And this money gave him the freedom to do that again, let's say. I don't know. I would think the houses in Labrador would be much less than $250,000. But I could be wrong. But, you go further out from cities and whatever. And he wanted a rural home. But it would seem to me that, the expenses of setting that all up might only be $100,000, and still he'd have money to put towards education and things for the kids or whatever. to help them along. And so there it was. And like I say, the show seemed like it was just dragging on for a while, but the last half hour of this episode, you had Dub went out, then Timber went out. I couldn't believe it. And then William is left, and he's won. And it's always so funny when they're talking, you know, the guy's asking health questions, and they're just like bumbling through it. And then they get the touch on their back, and they look, and it's their mate. It's this, you know, it's William's wife. And he's just like, he's like shocked. He almost like falls over. He doesn't even know what to do, and she hugs him. You won, da, da, da. So it was great. But there it is. Alone, season 11. And, you know, this idea, you know, Timber could have really found out what he was really looking for in this period of aloneness. So it could be that he really did go out at the right time, and he got something much better than the money could be, because this idea of, you know, he's a Christian, so there was a lot of this, you know, the relationship with God and everything being honed out kind of in the situation where you know, you don't have the TV on or your phone all this time. He could have really come out with a bigger prize than $500,000. You know, I'd mentioned St. Benedict. He lived as a hermit for 3 years. And after that 3 years, he had a much better handle on himself, humanity, and everything to go on and write the Rule of St. Benedict, which is the way many monasteries now, still 1,500 years later, they use that rule. So one of his biggest miracles was developing that rule. So that came out, I feel, out of that period of aloneness. And so hopefully Timber had things happen to him spiritually so that his life can continue on the track, the upward track that he wanted it to be in.